This is Mrs. Winnert's math class, Chapter 10, Lesson 10.6, Part 9, Problem Solving with both customary and metric conversions. But before we begin, did you hear the news? King Henry drinks unusually dark chocolate milk, many large gulps. Remember that sometimes for this lesson. Today's learning target: by the end of today's lesson, you should confidently be able to say, I can solve word problems that require customary units or metric units conversions. Example number 1. Aaron is making fruit punch for a family reunion. He needs to make 120 cups of fruit punch. If he wants to store the fruit punch in gallon containers, how many gallon containers will Aaron need? First thing we do in any word problem is underline the question, see what it's asking us. How many gallon containers will Aaron need? Next thing we do, see what facts we know from our question. We know that he needs to make 120 cups of fruit punch. We know that he wants to store it in gallon containers. I know that cups and gallons are different, so I think I'm going to need to convert my 120 cups into gallons. 120 cups equals blank gallons. I'll draw my gallon guy since I'm converting cups and gallons, so I have him to look back to and refer to for my conversions. As always, when I'm doing this conversion, I need to decide whether my unit is a smaller unit turning to a larger unit or a larger unit turning to a smaller unit. And I know that cups are smaller than gallons, so this is going to be small to large, and small to large means that we need to divide. So I write down the number they gave me, which is 120. I write down my operation, which is division, and I write down my conversion. How many cups are in a gallon? Well, I look over at my gallon guy and I will count the C's that are inside the G. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So there are 16 cups in a gallon, and that's what I'll divide. So I'm going to say 120 divided by 16. 1 is less than 16, so it can't have a chocolate bar. 12 is less than 16, so it can't have a chocolate bar. But 120 is larger than 16, so that would be a single chocolate bar or a single digit answer. I'm going to shrink my gallon guy so that I have room for my scrap, because I don't know my 16 times tables, so I'm going to use my benchmarks. Therefore, I'll say 16 times 1 equals 16. 16 times 5, I'll work it out, and I find that it's 80. And 16 times 10 equals 160. I need 120. It's more than 80, but less than 160. It's kind of right smack in the middle. So let's try 16 times 7. 7 times 6 is 42. Put down the 2, carry the 4. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 4 is 11. 112, that looks good. Let's go with the 7. So 7 times 16 is 112. We'll subtract. 0 minus 2, I can't do it, so I have to borrow. Cross out the 2, make it a 1. Now I can turn that 0 into a 10, and 10 minus 2 equals 8. 1 minus 1 is 0, 1 minus 1 is 0. So I have a remainder of 8. And remember in an earlier lesson when we were making conversions, what do we do when we have a remainder? The whole number goes into the new unit, so the whole number 7 will be 7 gallons, and my remainder is how many I have left over of my old unit. So I have 7 gallons and 8 cups left over. But this was a word problem, so I have to go back to the original question. And that question says, how many gallon containers will Aaron need? He has 7 gallons and 8 cups, so he will need 7 gallon containers to hold all 7 gallons, but he has 8 cups left over, and he's not just going to pour that on the floor, so we need to add another container for that extra 8 cups, and 7 plus 1 equals 8. Therefore, how many gallon containers will Aaron need? The answer is Aaron will need 8 gallon containers, and that's my final answer. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 1 right now. Let's take a look at example number 2. Sharon is working on a project for art class. She needs to cut strips of wood that are each 1 decimeter long to complete the project. If Sharon has 7 strips of wood that are each 1 meter long, How many 1 decimeter strips can she cut? Again, word problem, find what it's asking you, find the question. How many 1 decimeter strips can she cut? Now find what we know. We know that she has 7 strips, and we know that each strip is 1 meter long. We also know that she needs to cut strips of wood that are each 1 decimeter long. So let's focus on the green portion first. She has 7 strips of wood that are each 1 meter long. This is going to be a 2-part problem. Part A will be how long are all those 7 strips all together. So my 7 strips, each of them are 1 meter long. And of course 7 times 1 equals 7. So I know that altogether she has 7 meters of wood. And now part B, I know that I have 7 meters of wood strips, but the question wants to know how many 1 decimeter strips can she cut. So I really need to convert these 7 meters to decimeters. So part B, 7 meters equals blank decimeters. I don't have that much room on this page, so I'll rewrite this conversion problem on the next page. So in my conversion problem, 7 meters equals blank decimeters. The first thing I'm going to focus in on and notice is meters and decimeters are metric units of measure. And anytime I'm doing conversions with metric units of measure, I need good old King Henry, drinks, and usually dark, chocolate milk, many large gulps. I'm going to find my first given unit, which is my M. Single letter has to be the unit for meters. Put my circle over unit. My next one is DM. There's no A there. It's going to simply be the D, and that's where I'll put my dot. I know the cage has to cover the ant, so it will move 1 place to the right. Take my given number, which is 7. I don't see a decimal, so I remove the invisibility cloak, and there it is. I'm going to cross out that decimal. I'm going to move it 1 place to the right, just like my cage moved to my ant. Have to put place value 0 to do that. Move it 1 place. So that answer is 70. I'll put that back into there, and I go back to my original problem. I write in my 70, and the question says how many 1 decimeter strips can she cut? So the answer will be Sharon can cut 70 1 decimeter strips. And that's my final answer. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 2 right now. We move on to example 3, and just so that you're aware ahead of time, examples 3, 4, and 5 will all kind of go together. They'll all be about Eddie and this drink cooler of his. So let's take a look at it. Eddie has a drink cooler that holds 10 gallons of water. He's filling the cooler with 1 quart container. How many times will he have to fill the quart container to fill the cooler? So when I'm picturing this, I'm thinking about Eddie, boy who had in my class a few years ago. I'm thinking about one of those big orange Gatorade coolers, right? It's going to hold 10 gallons of water. Well, I know he can't go bring that to the sink and fill it, because how is he going to carry that thing filled with water? So instead he has a 1 quart container. So I'm thinking about like a large, maybe juice container that's holding 1 quart of water. And he's going to go to a sink, fill it up, dump it into the orange one. Go back to the sink, fill it up, dump it in the orange one. The question here is, how many times will he have to fill that quart container to fill the entire 10-gallon cooler? So let's see what we have. Question, how many times will he have to fill the quart container to fill the cooler? What do we know? We know that he has a cooler that holds 10 gallons of water. And we know that he's filling the cooler with 1 quart containers. Really what I'm looking for here is how many quarts are in 10 gallons. So I'm going to write down that question, 10 gallons, my known item first, 10 gallons equals blank, because I don't know how many, quarts. And my units are customary units of measurement for liquid, so I'm going to go ahead and draw my gallon guy on the side to help me. So here's my gallon guy, and now I'm ready to go ahead and solve this problem. Gallons are larger than quarts, as I can see by my picture in gallon guide, because the G is larger. So this is going to be large to small, which means I am going to multiply. Take my given number, which is 10, my operation I just chose, which is times, and I need to see how many quarts are in a gallon. I'll count 1, 2, 3, 4 quarts are in a gallon, so I'll write that number next to my 10 times. And 10 times 4 I know equals 40. So 10 gallons equals 40 quarts. Go back to my actual question. How many times will he have to fill the quart container to fill the cooler? Well, if 10 gallons equals 40 quarts, then he'll need to fill the quart container 40 times to fill the 10-gallon cooler. So Eddie will have to fill the quart container 40 times, and that's my final answer. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 3 right now. Let's take a look at example 4. And again, remember we said examples 3, 4, and 5 all go along with Eddie in this cooler. So example 4 says, if Eddie uses a 1-cup container to fill the cooler, how will that affect the number of times he has to fill a container to fill the cooler? Remember when he used a 1-quart container, he needed to go take 40 trips to fill the 10-gallon cooler. So he still has that 10-gallon cooler, but now we need to fill it with a 1-cup container. So I need to do a bit of a different conversion this time. I'm going to take my 10 gallons, because that's how big the cooler still is, and I need to convert that this time to cups. Again, gallons and cups are customary units of measurement for liquid, so I'm going to go ahead and write my gallon guy. I look at my units. Gallons are larger than cups, as I can see by my picture. So I'm going to write large to small. We know large to small means we multiply. Take my given number, which is 10. My operation that I just found, which is multiplication, and I need to see how many cups are in a gallon. So I'll go to gallon guy and I will count all of my cups. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. There are 16 cups in a gallon, so I write down times 16. When I see a problem like that, I know I can do basic facts. 1 times 16 is 16. Tack on that extra 0, so I get 160. So 10 gallons equals 160 cups. And if I go back to the question asks, how will that affect the number of times he has to fill a container to fill the cooler? Well, now I know it's going to take him 160 times to fill the 10-gallon cooler, but when he used the quart container, it only took him 40 times to fill the 10-gallon cooler. That makes sense, actually, right? Because a cup is much smaller than a quart. So if the container is smaller, he will need to fill it more times to fill that 10-gallon cooler. So my answer will be, since the container is smaller, he will need to fill it more times. He will now need to fill it 160 times to fill the cooler. And that will be my final answer. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 4 right now. So example number 5 says, what if Eddie only uses 32 quarts of water to fill the cooler? How many gallons will he have used? So it's still that 10-gallon container, but he's not going to fill it all the way. He's only going to put 32 quarts of water in. How many gallons is that? How many gallons would he have used if he only uses 32 quarts? Again, this sounds to me like a conversion problem. I need to convert my 32 quarts into gallons. So I'm going to write 32 quarts equals blank gallons. And again, since I look at my units, they're customary units of liquid measurement. I know that means I'm going to draw my gallon guy. So here's my gallon guy. I focus in on my units. Quarts are smaller than gallons, so this is going to be small to large, which means I divide. Write down my given number, which is 32, the operation I just chose, which is division. And I need to see how many quarts are in a gallon. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it'll be 32 divided by 4, and I know that 32 divided by 4 equals 8, so it's 8 gallons. And the question says, how many gallons would he have used? So my answer will be, Eddie would have used 8 gallons, and that's my final answer. Please stop the video and complete worksheet number 5 right now. So let's review. When solving word problems, as with any word problem, you really need to think it out. You could draw a picture if you want to, picture it as a TV show or a YouTube video in your mind, but you really need to think out what's happening to make sure that your final answer makes sense. In this problem here, I had a remainder and I needed to add 1 to make the answer make sense. Otherwise, I would have had those 8 extra cups. In example number 2, I couldn't figure out how many decimeter strips she cut until I figured out how much wood she had altogether. So first I had to multiply the 7 strips times the 1 meter. I knew she had 7 meters of wood, and then I could convert 7 meters to decimeters to find out that she had 70 strips. In example 3, I had to do a simple conversion, but realized that the number of quarts was also the number of trips that he had to make to fill the container. In question 4, they changed the quarts to cups, so that was a new conversion. And the question I wanted to know is, how did that affect the number of times he had to fill the container? So I really needed to answer how that affected it, is that he had to fill it more times than he did in example 3. And example number 5 switched it up yet again. He still had a 10-gallon container, but he wasn't going to fill it up. He was only going to fill it with 32 quarts of water. Therefore, we needed to make that conversion as well. So with word problems, you really need to stop and think about what it's asking you, how to solve it, and what type of answer it's looking for. Hopefully by now you can confidently say, I can solve word problems that require customary units or metric units of conversion. We will be doing more practice in class. If you have any difficulties, please see a teacher. Good luck with this lesson.